Welcome back to the show, listeners. I'm really excited to be joined today by another of our Real Tradie Wives, because I think it's really important that we get the varying perspectives that we have within the industry. As I say, just about every time I talk about a Real Tradie Wife, we don't wake up one morning when we're little girls and decide that we want to run building companies generally, or nor do we wake up and think, oh, I want to work with my partner or husband. Instead, we fall into this opportunity, and some of us manage to make fantastic careers out of it. Some of us get very dejected and bored with it all at some point and move on with our lives, but not you, Miss M. Guest from CG Carpentry. Yes, I nailed it. I was really worried I'd stuff it. Em, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be talking to you.
Oh, me too. This has been a long time coming. I'm very excited. Tell us a little bit about how you came to be a tradie wife.
Well, I've always been a tradie wife. I'm married to Cam, who essentially has been, left school, became a carpenter, went to TAFE, did all that stuff. So I've not known him doing any other role but carpentry and building. So essentially, I've followed him with that journey. We've been together from a very young age of 13.
Oh, wow.
I know.
I didn't realize you were that young. I knew it was high school.
Babies. So yeah, it was a high school sort of situation. And Cam's line is carpenters essentially. So his dad was a carpenter, and dad before him. So it was it's something that I know no different from in terms of the trade with the partner. So yeah, 2017 we actually branched out on our own. He'd been always working for other builders, and essentially we made a big move to Lake Macquarie from Sydney. And when we did that, he was working for a bit of a rep, I would say, on the coast / Lake Macquarie. He's got a bit of a rep, this builder. We decided we could do it better, and he was just banging his head up against the wall every morning going to work. So 2017 we did our own thing, bought a ute, started it all from that, and from the quote unquote helping in the business has now grown to me being completely submerged and loving life within our business.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out for our listeners, because I know so much about many of our Real Tradie Wife guests. You are not only working full time in the business, you're actually running the business next side to Cam. Yeah, as the business manager at a minimum. We might even work on a better title than that as we go. But this isn't what you always did. You were working in the accounting industry before this, and you had purchased a hairdressing salon. That's what you were doing when we first met you, which is, are we coming up to 2 years? Did we decide recently?
Are.
Yeah. Yep. Almost 2 years ago. Can you tell us a bit about that journey? Because that's interesting all on its own. And I certainly see hairdressing, not to say that you're a hairdresser, you owned the salon. It's a trade in itself. And so there's a lot of transferable skills in what you've learned as a business owner in that industry that you've been able to bring into your building company. Can you tell us about that part of your career?
Yeah, so I suppose, the accounting industry came first. I was always in Sydney. I had quite a few roles that were basically starting in accounts payable, and then essentially got to the I suppose the whole biz of accounting itself, and did a traineeship under an accountant. And I had been going regularly, like all ladies do, to get their hair done to my local, literally 100 meters from my house, hairdresser. And the opportunity came up that business was actually for sale. I had been sitting getting my hair done for so long, thinking how much better this salon could be. The processes, the way things were going in there, it was just a gold mine sitting there waiting to be, I suppose, explored and just really elevated in so many areas that it was actually killing me sometimes getting my hair done down there, because I was like, so I essentially, I love getting my hair done. It's one of my favorite things to do. And with my background at that point, I was only working a couple of days a week for an accountant, and I really wanted to, my youngest was starting school. I really wanted to just transition into something that would make me happy, make me be able to make my own hours as well, and not being of the trade, being able to run the girls and the actual business itself was really it really elevated me to a space where I could walk away for my kids if I needed to, because we do have a son with some extra needs in terms of surgeries each year. He's got a bone condition. So it was prioritizing his health in a way that didn't detriment our income. Not to the detriment of our income, I should say. So yeah, it was almost, I suppose, I actually have never looked at it like Cam being a tradesman and then the hairdressers being tradesmen. Of course they are. I looked at it as a viable business option for myself at the time, and how I could leverage not physically being within a business to work in it like an employee. So I had probably formed a lot of my management skills around running the salon. And yeah, now a lot of them have transferred over into the carpentry side of things and construction. So it taught me a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. I gave in to things and staff and things like that way too easily. And I think it's set me up in a nice space for me now to make sure that we are looked after ourselves as well as our employees. And the way we run our business is, it's all centered around the way all of our mental health is. So that's super important to me, and that has transferred over into the trade business. And I would say that's probably one of our biggest strengths within our business now. We're a very small team, but we're a tight-knit, very solid team, which is really great.
Yeah, it is. You guys are doing fantastic things. A question popped up for me as you were talking about making mistakes with staff that I know that you have not repeated in CG Carpentry. That's 2 times I got it right. For the record, everyone that's listening, we have we're working with another business that was GC Carpentry. Is that right? Or CJ Carpentry? They were so close. I really struggled. Got them both wrong all the time, much to my shame. I had a really interesting question, or an interesting thought bubble for me, was the differences between working with women and men. And I know with my background in pharmacy, there are a lot of male pharmacists, not very many male pharmacy assistants. So I tended to work with a lot of the males because I was working with the pharmacy owners or the pharmacy managers. Early on, though, when I was still working on the floor as a pharmacy assistant, I was working with all the women, and the way I worked and managed them was actually, interestingly, very different to the way I worked with and managed the men. Yeah. And I wondered if you had found a similar difference between the way you were able to work with each of the sexes, because I think we do a really good job of avoiding these conversations, and yet they're really important, particularly to perhaps a tradie partner or a tradie wife that's listening to the podcast today and wondering, well, I'd really like to jump in and help out, but I don't know where to start. And I'm not really sure about pushing into that male industry. And I think there's a few myths that perhaps between you and I, we can dispel here. So my question is, did you find that there was a difference between working with women and working with men?
Yes. Hard differences. So I suppose I do miss the solid group of women around each other, and I had created such a tribe in the salon, and when I say that, it was real girl power tribe, and it was, we just look after each other on every level. I do have a smaller team now than what I did, so how it computes, I suppose, now working with only males, I find that if in particular our employee knows our why, he seems to just run off the back of that. He as long as we sort of bring to every, if there's an issue or something we need to talk about, if we bring the why to it from the beginning, and the how we can get to that next step all together, and why again as to how he can be elevated himself, I find that really steers him through. Obviously that's the type of person he is as well, but I do find that obviously I'm having conversations with men like I've never had before within this industry. And I do find obviously it's pretty across the board that the women, that side of things is still not 100% sorted in terms of equality. Where I do find that if I go to a trade event, I'm often the only lady there. And, I've actually got to take myself on site next week with a whole bunch of trades that are all men. I don't have a specific problem with that. I do change the tone of my conversation, I would say. And I would say there's a lot of fun on site. There's a lot of banter. There's a lot of, maybe some non-PC conversations that happen as well, that obviously amongst women, we try and make sure we're covering all those PC items. And I would compute that into, I have a great husband who also elevates me at every level. And basically he walks around telling everybody that he's the 2IC and M is the one to talk to if you need to sort anything. So I've got the support from a ground level from him, and that shows with employees with employees we've had in the past. That has computed really beautifully. I haven't had any pushback within my own team. So it's almost, Cam has set the standard for how everyone should be treated. And we're very mindful of everybody's family foremost, and the why we're doing this, and why do you want to be here?
And have you had pushback outside of your team within the industry?
Yes, I have. I would say that most of the pushback that I have received, we now don't deal with those people.
Yeah.
That was a pretty obvious reaction from us. And when I say that, I would say it would probably be more related to suppliers. If I've had a bit of pushback on something that I may not have understood fully, tried to gain some clarity on, didn't receive the clarity, and essentially just wanted to talk to my husband. That has happened a few times to me. And I've also had that within our sales process with some male clients. But for the most part, I think I'm very, very hard up on now making sure everybody knows that there is a procedure to everything, and the way we go through our process from the beginning is me. And I find it elevates us. Even when I do go to a trade event now, I hold my head up high, and I am often singled out by someone who is, say, hosting the event, saying, what was your opinion of this? And, that sort of thing. So I do find that has, I mean, I might feel a bit alone in some regards, but for the most part, I have a very supportive team. So that helps. And we will only be in the future recruiting team that are part of that culture and suit our culture.
Yeah, it's setting that tone right from the very beginning, isn't it? So that you do have that collaboration that you require to get the result. And I, interestingly, had very similar experience to yours, even though I'm a lot older than you, Em, and started a lot longer before you did. So there was still a lot of statesmen in the industry. Let's keep this really respectful.
That's nice.
And so they were, I actually, my negative experiences were on site. They weren't with suppliers. I had a fantastic group of suppliers that helped me, because I had that period of time where I needed to step up and run the business without assistance or without support. And so I didn't know what an LVL was. I didn't know what wood to timber. See, I still don't even get the words right. Come on. I didn't know what to order at what time. And I would literally have to ring them and say, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? And I think it was probably that vulnerability that meant that suppliers were fantastic. And I didn't have that opportunity with some of the subcontractors. Our internal team were absolutely fantastic, because I'd always dropped into site. Much like what you're saying, I'd always still had a positive experience with them. It was some of those external subcontractors that I found very, very challenging, because they wanted to pull the wool over my eyes. And that only created a negative outcome for them in the end, because they had to move on. I didn't have time or space to support the business if I wasn't being supported within it. And so, if you're listening to this and you think, oh, I'm a bit frightened, I've seen a real shift in the past 10 years. There's a real definite shift. There's a lot more acceptance of our roles within businesses. There's a lot more lady tradies too, so you're not quite so isolated. You get to see them on site now as well. Still rare, unfortunately. And I like my nails and my hair and stuff. I can understand why nobody wants to get dirty and stinky all day long. It's not what I would do. And so there is some balance there that's slowly coming within the industry. However, I think it's important to note that it can still be tough. There are times when conversations are not necessarily comfortable. And I want to encourage, and you and I, and there's another member of our community that we've had these chats with, where we call that conversation out, where we've built the confidence enough to be able to say, hey, I don't really think this is appropriate to be talking about. Full stop. Not talking about when there's a lady in the room. I just don't think this is an appropriate conversation, end of story. And I feel that takes a bit of time to grow in confidence. However, if you're well supported, you can do that at any time. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. I would. Yeah, I'm very lucky that not many of those situations have come up where I've felt like I've needed Cam to rescue me. Luckily, I've got a pretty strong constitution, so there is a lot of situations that I just navigate my way through, and thankfully I have some pretty amazing coaches and a community that I can lean on quite heavily if I need, and just some people who really get exactly where I'm from, and women in very, very similar positions to me, regardless of whether it's the same trade. It's a trade related business thing, and I have plenty of people who get me. So I would say the support, as long as you've got support in some way or another, you will get through those times. It's just like anything, navigating something new. But yeah, it's still a male dominated industry. Our electrician actually has a lovely young female apprentice who he's just put on, and it is a male based team. So but his wife is in a similar role to me. So it's interesting seeing it evolve, as you said, in the last couple of years. And I would love to have a female carpenter. I would absolutely chomp at the bit for a female carpenter. If that's on our, and actually our whole team is on board with anything like that as well. So I would, yeah, it would be definitely part of my, I suppose the more I learn about things as well, I just think, gosh, women we've got this in the palm of our hands. We've got this. And the more uplifting events and things that I go to as well, ladies' luncheons and things related around construction and the trades, the more I feel a part of the community. So there can be isolating times, but then there can be some really rewarding times personally as well within this industry.
I absolutely agree. I think one of the complexities, we talk a lot about the invisible load. And again, and I say this every time and I will continue to, this is in no way meant to be dismissive to the load that our men are carrying, running the businesses alongside us. However, this is a podcast for tradie wives and tradie partners. This isn't so much targeted at the men. So I want to acknowledge, when you're a mum, you're a business owner, you were straddling two businesses at one time. You're playing strong roles in both. You've got two kids. One has some health challenges. That means that there are times when you need to dip in and out of working so that you can be that main support within the family. Your husband's working super, super hard. Like, that's a lot to be carrying on a daily. You're also building a house, let me say. There is a lot that you carry. And so many of us do. And I wondered if maybe, and we can explore or talk about what that looks like for you on the day-to-day and what sort of boundaries you've had to work to put in place, but also what sort of support network you've had to draw on to create, I guess, the opportunity for you to do all of those things.
Yeah, so I suppose it was about this time last year where I realized that there was no situation where we could carry on doing both, running both businesses. Again, Cam is a wealth of support. I'm very lucky. My mother is as well, who lives very close to me. However, it just got too much. And because I'd had so many shutdowns with the salon in New South Wales over the lockdown, it was financially becoming a bit of a burden as well. I had lost the passion for it as well. So I think I had the support behind me. No one saying, this is silly, you shouldn't have ever bought that business or anything like that. I was very, very lucky that I just had a guiding group of people to help me out of that scenario, not to mention tradies in business when I really needed some guys, is this time for me to step in to Cam's in my business full time? Is this right? Is this right? You have all those doubtful thoughts that creep in and does affect your mental health. We, like I said, periodically have our son in and out of hospital. He on average has 2 to 3 surgeries a year on his bone disease. And that is, I have to compartmentalize that a lot because it doesn't, for us, we've learned over the years that it doesn't serve him to be so concerned about it all the time. He is a functioning kid. He just has moments where he's in and out because of surgery and recovery periods, etc. There is moments where I go, oh, why us? We've got this huge load. And I definitely go in and out of that. But I would say it's more now that I only have the one business to focus on, I'm able to pull my day into, okay, I probably compartmentalize as much as I can because I've got such a load. I look back and I sort of think, how the hell did I do? And I just didn't do it well, was probably the only answer for that. I had so many hats that I had to wear. I didn't do it well, but I compartmentalize my day as best I can. And this is still relatively new for me, being full-time in the business. But my son, who is challenged and has moments of needing additional help, I have to, obviously that's priority number one. And then from what I've learned, those emails, those phone calls, that schedule, that chart, that scope of works will always be there tomorrow. And I think I felt like I always had to solve everybody's problems for them before they even came up. So I think that was a load, an invisible load, like you're saying, that, I had this checklist in my head, and that checklist is insurmountable sometimes. So I definitely have to break down, now that I've just got the one role, and then obviously mother, wife, everything else. I do have to break it down and just sort of decide that priority one is my family. And the reason we are in this business is because we can walk away and be with our son whilst he recovers and be there for our daughter. So that is priority number one. And I think major lessons in perspective over the years as well. I put my own career and things like that in the middle of having children and being young as well. So I feel like I've missed out on a lot of my 20s because I've had children quite young. When I say that, I mean, what does that even mean when you call it anything in particular? But I definitely now have a very conscious effort that I need time out as well. And again, I am not penalized for that time out. I have a husband going, yeah, that's in the calendar, so that's happening, and make sure that does happen. So I think having that, I keep him accountable every now and again, going, just so you know, like even today I'm sitting down with Nick, and I can't be called, I can't be, I suppose there can't be anything that comes up in that process where I'm talking to Nick and he's like, no, have the best time, have the best chat. I'm lucky, I'm very lucky, and he is an amazing human. But I think when you break it down, and that kind of translates into your team as well, if you're not going to prioritize their health and their family's health, then really, what are we doing this for? Why are we here? And, we've got to love what we do. We've just got to play the game for 8 hours a day and come home and be us. And if we can do that as a team and a group, fantastic. We're lucky. We feel like we've got the golden ticket with our team at the moment. We do need to expand, but I am very wary of the fact that it's amazing right now. Yeah. But the expansion will need to come as we take on bigger and bigger jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we've stumbled into this, Em, because I'm really excited about the plans you and Cam have for this year around your own health and fitness. And it's more than that. I think it's about the connection and the opportunity to have fun individually. So when we work as a couple, it can be really challenging to prioritize fun time. Again, we talk a lot about date nights. We spend a lot of time talking within our community about date nights even, and yet it's just as important that we give ourselves time. And you and Cam have made some incredible changes, or not changes. You're going back to something you used to do, each of you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, essentially, I suppose our biggest goals at the moment, after 10 years, we've gone back into weekend sport.
Yes.
That's probably challenging, I would say. We've got some swollen ankles on site right now and a bit of a puffy knee. And I walk around with a bit of a limp after Saturdays, but for the most part, we're really enjoying it is separate time. I will premise on that. It definitely is. It's a social group, I suppose, event that is scheduled every week, and we actually, both of us are very driven and competitive.
Yep.
So if we don't go, or we'd have to be dying not to play. So we'll be always great team members because we'll always turn up. So it's something that the commitment to that took a lot of my headspace to get to, and even just prepping for the season, because it's I've gone back into netball and Cam's gone into soccer, but we, like I said, have always played really competitively at a relatively high level. So going back in at an unfit state was interesting, but to say the least, it's been really enjoyable. And also it's kind of nice to just do something for us. Our kids tag along and just kick a ball or throw a netball or whatever. They're not really interested in doing too many sports this year, and that's fine. That's where you've got to just execute something for yourself. So, and we're lucky. We've always been we've prioritized our marriage and our togetherness before all else. So that doesn't always work perfectly, as most tradie wives would know, but and your personal life issues can run into the same sort of issues as your professional life, because you are working with your partner. But overall, the model that he creates as a man and a husband and a dad is unbelievable, and my kids are very lucky to have him, and so am I. So in that tight knit headspace, we love working together for the most part, and I do frequent site. I'm on site probably at a minimum 2 to 3 times a week, because I feel as though I'm not connected unless I am, and I think that's important. A lot of women think that they shouldn't or can't enter site. Yep. You sure can. And you can go on there and boss lady the hell out of that site. You've got this, and took a very strong boss lady in front of me that I'm talking to get me to that point. But the minute you get there and you've got the right attitude and you've got the right gut feels for everything, then the sky's the limit.
Completely. It's just commanding that respect right from the very beginning.
Agree.
Talking of commanding respect, I want to take you back to something you keep saying. In fact, I think I lost count. I think we're up to about 6 or 7 times you've said how lucky you are.
I know you were going to say that.
Yeah, Miss M, you are not lucky. You have created all of what you have, including making the right choice for you and Cam. Like, you guys are a rock star couple. You're very solid. You work extremely well together. And that's not by luck. That's by design. Because you create this time where you come together in collaboration, but you also take time to support one another to pursue these individual passions, events, fun time out with the girls. And that has resulted in wonderful parents, fantastic business owners, and a very connected and loving married couple. And that's not luck. As you know very well, I don't believe in luck, full stop. There is no such thing as luck. It is all by design, and you've designed a beautiful life. And then now that I've schooled you in front of everyone that's listening, I'm going to take you back then to lots of tradie wives, when they first start helping out, we start usually by doing something on the books or taking care of social media or one of those things that just feel really elusive to our fellas. We can't see what else we could be doing. And I think you are working really hard to be at the forefront of what's possible for us to do without having trades ourselves. I'd love you to share with our listeners the kind of tasks that make up your role in your business.
Yeah, so essentially at the moment, it's evolved in the last 6 months quite rapidly. It started with the books and doing the books because of my background, and that being really my only role. Cam was selling everything, if we're going to say that, and selling jobs. I have now morphed it into, essentially, Cam has very limited time in the day to be going through a sales process. We're focusing on the higher value tasks, and as best we can, we're still working through some processes to get us elevated in that space. But my role has morphed into predominantly sales based for the business. I think I had a lot of imposter syndrome around this because I'm not a carpenter to begin with. Turns out you don't need to be a carpenter to be a salesperson. You just don't need that. You need the trust factor. You need the know-how, of course, but the know-how you can always get. And, you know, if you don't have it in front of you at that point, you can always obtain that information and send it on to a client later, or make that part of your sales process. There's all sorts of different ways you can do this, but essentially I'm the first port of call. I'm the first sales phone call. I do the first site visit and measure up, a rough measure up at this point. And then if a client decides that they want to go any further than that, then that's when Cam comes on board and his technical expertise come into play. So it's a bit of a vetting process through myself. I suppose, being in such social roles in the last couple of years, it's a bit of a weeding out the right person for us as well. We're in a unique position where we can choose. It sounds bizarre, but we can choose a client. We don't have to just take everybody's business. This is our life as well. We don't have to be working for someone who thinks we're going to work for A, nothing, and B, with their rules in mind and their rules only. So I think that's a bit of a myth within this industry as well. I don't have a single iota of trade background, and I can do those two very important trust visits, essentially, and trust phone calls and getting to know us phone calls pre even being on site. So I definitely, we're at a point where Cam doesn't get involved until that client has paid a deposit of sorts. Yeah. So it's the process has become that. Yeah. And even to the point where he at the moment is just really loving being on the tools, and that there's nothing wrong with that. There's progression plans in place for later on, and as we get a bit older, he's simply loving being a carpenter right now, and that's where I feel like I can support him in that right now. And yeah, there's I can sort of control the process from the beginning, which doesn't often involve him at all.
Yeah, it doesn't need to. I think it's a great myth to bust. We don't need to know the technicalities of building a home. We don't need to know how to plumb. We don't need to know how to run wires and be an amazing electrician. I give them a lot of shit, but they're amazing. Very hard task. We don't need to know the ins and outs of that to be able to find the right clients, set the right tone, engage with them well, educate them so they know what to expect, set the expectation, set the standard of communication and how we're going to be treated and how we'll treat them, and therefore create the experience for them. That does not need to be your tradie who is potentially on the tools, and maybe he's not on the tools. Maybe it's just a key area that you as the listener can really contribute to and do well, because we do it differently. And when you think, again, we're talking girl power very much on this podcast, it's important to know that most of the decision makers within a home are the women. They'll do the research. They'll make those initial reach out, fact-finding phone calls, or they'll send those emails. And to be met by another woman on the end of the phone, that's really powerful. It's empowering for your client to understand that they're, because there's still a lot of fear around working with tradies, because the media does a really good job of telling us all how crappy they are. Not true. And yet there's still a lot of fear. We don't know if we're going to have the wool pulled over our eyes, or if somebody's going to shark us out of money or do something else that makes us uncomfortable. So to reach out and find another lady on the end of the phone is very empowering for your potential client, and shortcuts that know, like, and trust that we need to have for somebody to want to part with their money and work with you in the first place. That doesn't mean that the guys can't do a fantastic job of this as well. When I'm speaking about women on this podcast, I'm always doing it with the understanding that men can do just as much as we can. This is not about pitting men and women against one another. It's just about supporting you ladies in the trades around what you could be doing within your businesses, if it's something that you're interested in, something that Em is doing particularly well. And that's not the only thing you do. You still are doing a lot of the data entry. We've got you slowly moving towards having bookkeepers on board. So you're working on the marketing as well, something you're really kicking butt with. You are working towards, so that financial piece is a really important one. You are cash flow forecasting for your building company. You are running things like break-even calculators to make sure that you're charging appropriately. That's one of those questions we read about all the time on social media. You're working with team development. So it's not just about, the ins and outs of work every day. You're working on developing that team and setting a culture and a standard for everybody, whether they're with you now or coming along, to adhere to. You run all of the communication within your business, both with clients and with team and subcontractors, ordering materials, setting schedules for jobs. Have I touched on everything? I feel like there's still more I'm missing.
Yeah, no, that's it. I suppose there's all those little ins and outs of things that have, 10 tails to one thing, but yeah, there's quite a few hats when you spell it out like that and you don't take a breath. I can I can go, oh yeah, I'm pretty good.
Yeah, you are. Hello, boss lady. I think
No,
there's so much capability for the role if we want it to be there. And I mean, there's just as much capability to have nothing to do with it. We've got plenty of gents that we work with where the ladies have their own careers. That's fantastic. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It's just about making a choice for you and what works for you. And in your case, Em, you've really stepped up and taken it all on board. You've decided this is what you want. This is a career for you just as much as it is Cam. You're going to stand beside him. You're going to run this business together, and you're doing an absolutely fantastic job.
Thank you.
You're
That's
welcome.
lovely.
Em, thank you so much for joining us today. I love your story. As I said, you guys are really kicking ass in business. You've worked really hard to make some huge changes over the last couple of years, and it's really paying off. We didn't even get to mention your new caravan and how you get away quite frequently in your van. That's all very exciting too.
It is.
And that's come about from your hard work and effort, right?
I just said lucky again. How dare I?
Liar.
Yeah, and that was something that was put so far down the priority list for us. We wanted this caravan, and we just kept putting it down as, no, we'll get that, when the house is built and all this sort of stuff. But the more you prioritize what's going to actually pull the most benefit out for you, the better it will be. And we had forecast that caravan being probably another year from now, and we managed to grab that last year. So yeah, we do probably need to take a few more steps to make sure we're celebrating those things a little bit more than what we are, but you can get there with proper planning, and head down, bum up doesn't always have to be hard physical work. It's just that working smarter aspect, and you can do this. You don't have to, as a woman in this industry, you don't have to walk around thinking, I can't do those things and I can't make those calls or put that scope together. You sure can, because you know what, you're gonna bugger it up. It's like anything. Just give it a go. You're probably going to make a mistake, and everything you learn from. And you can't really go wrong the more you try and the more you're passionate. I suppose my progression planning within this business is actually moving away from the things that I know, and it's moving towards more trade skills and more knowledge on, specific items for our builds, and just getting to that real nitty gritty. And that's sort of what I'm focusing on the next 6 months. And it's not, talk to me 2 years ago and it would have been like, oh, I'll never do that. No, I'll never do that. And it's part of what I want, and I can have it.
Yes, you can. Yes, you will. Love it. Em, thank you so much for joining us here.
Thank you. That was great.
I hope the experience serves as a reminder for you for all the amazing things that you've worked hard to achieve in the last couple of years.
Very true.